really to just introduce this discussion and this panel discussion. What we've been really focusing on for our organization is really looking at women in healthcare, right? We're so focused on the clinician side of what it is that we do, especially in my particular position, right? Being more clinician focused. But when we really talk about healthcare, most of the women on most of our platform are women, and we have close to 66% of all entry-level healthcare jobs are held by women. And so it's so important that we really think about the best way for all of us to have these kinds of discussions and really talk about what are some of the solutions that we can all drive together into creating just a more equitable solution for women as a whole to reach all the upper echelons of leadership, be that in a very traditional healthcare sense, but even outside of that, we've got a couple of entrepreneurs here. We have women leaders that are responsible for big hospital chains. We've got nurses and those that make an impact in their day-to-day community. So I am so appreciative for all of you. You guys are all superstars, and I can't wait to get started. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to have each of you kind of go around and do a little bit of an introduction, share some of your background about where you've been in your professional career and where you're at now. So Barbara, can I actually have you kick us off and get started?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. And so Barbara Wadsworth, I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Mainline Health, where I've been for almost 11 years. I joined as the System Chief Nurse in 2012 and been the Chief Operating Officer and the Chief Nurse for the past 3 years, and recently hired a new chief nurse so that I can just do the chief operating officer role, which is great. We are in Southeast Pennsylvania and outside of Philadelphia. We're a 5-hospital system. We serve over 2 million people in the area in 5 counties, deliver 8,000 babies, see 200,000 people in our emergency departments. We have 5 medical residency programs. We have a large ambulatory footprint. I'm a critical care nurse by background. I love being a nurse. I have always enjoyed taking care of people and feeling like I could make a difference. And so one of the reasons to aspire to do more, and I can't say that I always aspired to be a chief nurse, it came later in my journey, but you know, the more people I was able to work with, the more I felt like I could have a voice at the table and advocate on their behalf. And so as the Chief Operating Officer, I get to advocate for just about everybody because I have responsibility for all of the services, both on the acute care and the post-acute and the ambulatory setting. So, and I have a great team of people who do amazing work every day. And the best news is I get to hear all the good stories every day. So it's a privilege to be where I am.
Oh, that's so fantastic. And again, Barbara, thank you so much for joining us. Let's see, Nancy, would you be willing to do a quick introduction?
Sure. My name is Nancy Pellegrino. I'm the founder of a medical aesthetic office in Newport Beach, California. I have been incorporated as NP Aesthetics since 2007, and I'm the founder of the Route Beauty, which is a medical grade skincare line that we launched in 2019. I have been a nurse, a registered nurse for 35 years. This is my 35th year, and my 30th year as being a nurse practitioner. So I started off in the med-surg floor and worked my way through cardiac arrhythmia to the cardiac cath lab. And then that led me to being a family nurse practitioner. And I did internal medicine for 8 years. And then I found, basically I found Botox. And so I wanted to make that a career, and I've been doing medical aesthetics for the last 23 years, almost 24 years. I am now a trainer for Allergan, the major, pharmaceutical company. I've been a trainer since day one, when there was only 17 of us. Now there's 500 trainers. I am what's called a master expert trainer and a key opinion leader. I sit on advisory boards and do all that while being a mom and a wife.
Yes, it's nothing short of a miracle, all the stuff that you get done. So I'm so appreciative you're taking the time to sit and talk with us.
Thank you.
So Kelly, you are a little bit of the mental health, behavioral health side to all of this. I would really love to hear from you and get your introduction.
Sure, thanks, Rachel, and I appreciate being invited to sit with this panel and be in the company of so many amazing women. So my name is Kelly Hall. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am licensed to practice in Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. I am strictly telehealth, so I do work from home and have that luxury. It's one of the wonderful things that I've created in my life is for career-wise. I also do, well, background-wise, I really began my background mostly working with children and families in community-based settings, whether it be home or school. And little by little, it's just sort of transitioned. I had a period of being recruited into applied behavior analysis and worked in that setting for a while, still community-based. And by the nature of just natural, organic unfolding, it's been, I've determined that my ideal and expert niche population would be working with typically 18 to 55, but more so young adults, and that not good enough story, and also ADHD. So those are my two typical niche populations that I work with. I do a lot of cognitive work, mindset stuff. I'm also the owner and founder of Kelly Hall Coaching and Counseling. So I am also a life coach and I specialize in mindset coaching.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I cannot wait to pick your brain a little bit on some of the mindset side coming up later in our discussion. But until then, Audrey, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Rachel, thanks again for just having me on this panel with these wonderful women. But I'm a nurse of 38 years, critical care nurse. Absolutely love what I do. At 62, which I made a year ago, I said I was going to retire. But after making that initial retirement, after having a heart attack, after having open heart surgery, I felt like I was kind of being pushed out of my profession of something that I love. So, of course, recovering at home, I'm thinking, I miss what I do. I need to be back at work. And my husband is like, no, you're not going back to work. You don't need the stress, da. So July of 2022, I went back to work 1 day a week. That's all I'm doing. And it gave me back my joy. I was not sitting at home feeling depressed, feeling like, I had no life worth. So it's been good for me to be back. I would like to do more, but my husband's like, no. So, in working in critical care in the last 38 years, my specialty was cardiovascular. I worked in the open heart unit and just loved it. After COVID came in the last 2.5 years, I saw so many deaths. I saw so many nurses leaving the bedside. And it was just like, what are we going to do? What's going to happen to us in the future? So I've yet am trying to find that table that I can be at where I can be of assistance to help us get across this bridge. But being an open heart nurse, it was everything. I've worked with many wonderful nurses. And I want to play it forward. What can Audrey do to make things better again? Because at this point, I don't know where we're going. So I was listening to Barbara. I'm like, I need to be at her hospital. But yeah, working critical care has been everything. And I am the true bedside nurse. I don't want to do anything else other than just be at a table where I can be of assistance to let us get back to where we were going forward.
I know. It's so incredible. And you really have, I have always been so admirable towards you, just for all of the things that you have overcome, just from your
Right.
physical health, right? Of just that those unexpected things that you never think would come up, and finding the ability to be versatile and adapt to it is one of the hardest challenges that I think is such a human experience, that we all get put into those situations. But to be able to see you really take that on and still be so focused on giving back to others, I think is really incredible. So I wanted to take a second to really recognize that before we get too distracted. I just have to share. But Rupi, you're up. You're our last one, last but not least. Can you give a little introduction?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruby Tewia Intri, and I first of all want to thank Rachel for inviting me to this panel. And it's a pleasure to meet all the other panelists on the line this afternoon. I will say a little bit about myself, not a lot about me, but just a little bit. I've been a registered nurse for, I believe, 20 years. I started my career as a med-surg nurse in Maimonides Hospital here in Brooklyn. I then transitioned to surgery, and then I decided to switch gear totally. I did that for only 3 years. And then I went into home care nursing, where I spent most of my time with patients in the community. I really enjoyed that rotation a lot. And in that event, I developed the interest for wounds and ostomies. I went to become a certified wound and ostomy nurse. Did that in the community for some time, and when transitioned back again to New York Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan. Again, transitioned back now into a long-term care facility where I am the manager for the wound care department. This is where I am now. And my reason for being a nurse, everybody knows that to be a nurse is to care for people, but I also see it beyond that. I see nursing, number one, as a calling. Like Audrey mentioned, that right after COVID, a lot of nurses left the bedside. So I asked myself, like she did, that the future of nursing, if any other pandemic hits again, are we going to have nurses left at the bedside? The number of nurses that are left now, would they still be left at the bedside? Then the answer to that will be that nursing is a calling. The healthcare field, I deem it as a calling. You have to be called. Audrey left and came back. It is a call that she was committed to, and that led her to come back. So the future of nursing, I see as, if people will see it as a calling, then we will remain at the bedside no matter what. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ruby. I really appreciate your insight. And just for everyone, Ruby is not giving herself enough credit for really the work that she does with taking charge and bringing in mentorship into wound care. She really is such a fantastic addition to the panel. And one of the common threads that I'm getting from all of you ladies is that your careers really do evolve over time, whether you anticipate it or not, right? And Barbara, you touched on this of maybe the COO track was never the traditional pathway, right? But can you speak a little bit to how that evolution happened, and what are some of the things you did to really propel your career in that focus?
Yes. So excited to be on with all of you amazing ladies. So, I mean, I started as a candy striper, and then went to LPN school, became an RN, went to a 4-year college, and then started out in critical care, and really had every position up through nursing director. And I remember when the directors of nursing used to come around, and we were sort of terrified of them. And we would run into our rooms in the ICU and stay in there because we were afraid of them. Or the CNO, we always thought like, oh, the CNO. And I was always very impressed with the CNO. And I remember, working for a manager that didn't always do things the way I thought maybe they should be done. And I thought, well, you don't know what her job is, so you shouldn't criticize what she does. And so, I progressed up through many leadership roles, always focused on the patient, the family, and the staff, and trying to create the best environment for everyone. And so, and I definitely didn't want people to be afraid of me, as we were afraid of the director of nursing. I mean, we were terrified of her. She was not very friendly, but she was super smart, but she just wasn't very friendly. And so I've always made it an important point to talk to all of the staff, know their names, because if you show up and you're the chief nurse, people are like, oh, that's Barbara, that's the chief nurse. Like, I want them to be like talking to me. And sometimes they talk to me and they're like, whoa, wait, you're Barbara. Like, should I be saying what I just told you? I'm like, sure, you can tell me whatever you want. So, and ask them questions that engage them and get them excited. And, again, I didn't see myself as the chief nurse. That came much later. And really just thinking that I wanted to be at the table to advocate, to get everybody as much of the resources as they needed to take good care of their patients and to work in the most professional environment where they had a voice, and that, they knew more about how to make change than we did as leaders because they did it every day. So one just quick example, during COVID, in the very beginning, and we didn't know a lot of things. We were talking about personal protective equipment and how we would, I'll say, wear it for a longer period of time or reuse it, which is not what we were all taught. And we were all talking about the options. And I said, go talk to the critical care nurses. Just go talk to them and ask them, tell them what we're trying to accomplish and tell them why, and then ask them how they would do it. And we took their recommendations, and that's what we instituted, because they're the ones who had to do it. They're the ones who were going to have to put back on, that reusable isolation gown or whatever. And so we asked the staff, and we came up with a very good solution. So again, being the chief operating officer, I didn't see that in my sort of trajectory, but I'm really happy that I'm in the role today, because I get to advocate actually beyond nursing. And I get to be, I'll say, a leader at the table advocating for each of the presidents and their hospitals and for the community and things that we should be doing in the community, connecting with, churches and others, and addressing health equity. And if I summarized mostly what we focus on here at Mainline Health, it's safety, quality, equity, and of course, affordability. And so it's a privilege to do it. And I happen to have a great team of people and a great CEO. And so it's been great, but I am learning because, I have been a nurse my entire life for like 37 years. And so I am learning, and I am challenged as the COO, and I expect I'll make a few mistakes along the way, but that's okay. If we don't make any mistakes, then we're not doing enough. So it's been great.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And one of the things that you highlighted that I think is so important to your leadership style is knowing when to let somebody else take that wheel and make those decisions based on their experience and their background, and knowing how to really champion their decisions and giving them that support. And so I think that is so fantastic. Nancy, I think you might have something interesting to add to this, because you are the leader within 2 different companies. And sometimes, just as Barbara said, we really choose leadership roles, sometimes passively choose them, sometimes actively choose them, but sometimes we blink, and that's just where you're at. So what has that transition been, and how does it kind of relate to Barbara's experience?
Well, I don't really look at myself as a leader. I look at myself as a doer because I'm doing. And my experience is like Barbara's. I was, I went through all my roles in the hospital, and I loved each one of them. And then found myself here. And that's what I love about nursing, is that we can reinvent ourselves over and over and over again. And I too love the our calling, Ruby, to be a nurse. I think it's the caring profession. People always ask us, and I know they've asked all of you, did you ever want to be a doctor? And the answer was always no for me. I never wanted to be a doctor. My grandmother was a nurse. My aunts were nurses. I have now 3 nieces and soon to be 4 and 5 nieces that are nurses that hopefully I've inspired. But that's kind of what my path is, Barbara, and Rachel, is that I wanted to inspire other people. Once I got to this role, as you say, I never thought I'd be a business owner, much less a business owner of 2 big companies, a national skincare brand, and then a local aesthetics office. I was asked to branch out and do several offices, but I wanted to keep a central and to be able to keep control over what I contributed. And I still believe that I'm caring for individuals and affecting their lives. But I'm also, one of the things that I love doing right now is being a mentor and having, like I said, I've had, now I believe it's 5 nieces that want to be nurses or have become nurses, and they come to me and they want to see what I've done. They want to pick my brain. And I've written beautiful letters of recommendations because I do believe it's a calling. I do believe people are meant to go the path they're going to go as a nurse. And then when people want to say, I want to go into aesthetics, which a lot of nurses do these days because of things like the pandemic, and it's just a hard job, right? And so I tell them, I want you to go to the hospital, and I want you to get experience there first. I want you to be able to take care of a sick patient and to be under that stress and to be able to remain calm and cool, because when you're in my setting, you're all by yourself. There's very few people around to help you, especially other nurses. And I want you to have that confidence, and that being a floor nurse does. And I've had more nurses or wannabe aesthetic nurses just stay in the hospital because they found their calling. They love it there. Pediatrics, cardiac, oncology. So they are where they're meant to be. So I'm glad to be a part of that journey too. So to answer your question, the journey's been long, varied, and crazy, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I agree. And something that you said about mentorship is really integral, right? Because sometimes there's only lessons that we can learn by either experiencing ourselves or hopefully getting that from someone else who's already kind of walked that path. And Ruby, you have really taken in that charge of really teaching as much as you can on wound care. So when you are in that mentorship opportunity, what is some of your strategies that you do that makes that mentorship and that advice so successful, especially for the younger women coming into the field?
Thank you very much, Rachel. So what I do to make it seamless, I would say, is letting the mentees feel valued. I don't want to look down on anyone in any way. I want to see them as human beings and value their opinions. So that is an area that keeps me going all the time, like letting people feel valued. Also, as a mentee, you want to have a good teamwork approach, work collaboratively with the mentee and meet them where they are. Do not try to lord things over them or let them feel overwhelmed. So here in Rutland, with the help of God, we have been able to launch what we call the mentee mentor effort on most of our units in terms of pressure injury prevention. I think that's what I can attest to for now. But what I want to say more is having your mentees feeling valued and not looking down on them. That approach helps the mentees to come easily to you, and you can easily address their questions rather than pushing them back and seeing yourself as being on top or over them. Makes it impossible for you to make any difference in anyone's life.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think your approach is so valuable because really being a humble learner is a really tough position to be in, right? And just being in that position where you know you don't know everything and you know you have to get help from someone, it's not always a really good feeling, and it can be uncomfortable. So when you have that receptiveness from a mentor who really creates that openness and that kind of environment, is going to have leaps and bounds more value to that mentee than it would the other way around. Thank you for sharing. Kelly, I know that you and I have had so many conversations about the future of behavioral health and mental health, especially when it comes to women post-pandemic. What are some of the things that you are really seeing come out of this that impacts women more than the rest of the population?
Really good question, Rachel. And I'm bearing witness to women stepping into more leadership roles and really making that larger, more global impact, shifting perspective, maybe applying some more of that self-care, recognizing that if we're depleted and our battery is dead, then we are not going to be very effective with our clients. Maybe looking to balance work life a little bit more effectively, and still recognizing that it's a challenge. We have more and more people too, as therapists, telehealth is becoming the thing to do, right? So, you're having more and more therapists who are working from home, and what does that look like? And how do they maybe tap into some resources they didn't need to access before? You've got maybe your child in the background and you're trying to conduct a session with a client. Of course, you want to maintain all of those paramount important components of a session, right? And HIPAA compliance and confidentiality. And so I think there's a sense that more and more therapists are noticing that, number one, we're super grateful that out of the pandemic came a shift about mental health and recognizing that it's for everyone. That's not for people who have critical, acuity or severe traumas or whatever. It's for every person to access now, and that they're starting to do their own work and really tapping, and like I said, tapping into some of those resources that maybe they didn't recognize were effective or even available, or even giving themselves permission to do so before. So I think that's it's inspiring and it's certainly hopeful. And you know how I feel about burnout in my field. So I'm very excited to see more clinicians taking that route and really wanting to create a healthier, more balanced approach to their work while still being really, really helpful to others. And it takes something. I mean, I myself, I'm taking off Good Friday, and I mean, that's something for me to take off a whole day of work. Usually, I'll take time here and there, but it's finding that balance. We all have hectic, busy lives, and especially if you're an entrepreneur such as myself, and then you do some contract work on the side too, it's how do you provide really high quality services while being adamant and a stand for your own health and well-being too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you touched on with self-care, right? It's so much easier said than done, right? Because we can always convince ourselves that that extra 20 minutes that we spend working on something else will derive more value to somebody else than that 20 minutes of care for yourself, right? And there's always that balance. Audrey, I would love to get your perspective on it, because whether you chose downtime or not, you ended up with a lot of downtime. What was it like having to balance that and really adapt to forced time off and really giving yourself that time to heal? What was that like?
I'm telling you, when you think about retirement and what you're going to do and how much free time you're going to have. When you get to that point, it's like it's too much time. You know, I hated being at home doing nothing. I hated not being with my coworkers, not being able to take care of my patients. That was my love. And I don't know if I would have felt any different if I hadn't had the heart attack, if I didn't have open heart surgery, if I just would have been like super, super happy. I'm retired. I'm done with this. Nursing is over. But it was hard for me to be at home with all that time, with nothing to do. Even I've got 2 granddaughters who are 3 and 5 years old, who I kept telling myself before any of this happened, I just can't wait until I can spend more time with the girls. And now it's still, I've had enough of them. So, you know, when I think forward, at 63 years old now, I still want to be in the hospital. I still want to take care of my patients. So when something has been a part of you for so long, it's just hard to give up. It's hard to give up. You know, and I talk to my girlfriends, well, Audrey, maybe not ICU, maybe you should do something else. I don't want to do anything else. I like my critical care, but my risk factors, highly stressed job, hypertensive, diabetic. What are you doing to yourself, Audrey? Do you want to repeat what happened, you know, December of 2022? So I have to think about what I need to do. And no, it has not been easy having all that free time off, because you rather be doing what you love the best.
Yeah, and I can absolutely understand it. I don't like to sit idle, but can we just say one thing that I think we are all thinking is that you do not look anywhere close to the age that you're saying that you are. You look fantastic. So I think you've got such a youthful energy. We just have to say what we're all thinking. But going back to some of those things, Barbara, I want to know from your perspective in your role, where are you seeing some of the greatest opportunities for women to be able to find that leadership position, especially in that traditional healthcare environment? Where are some of those opportunities that you see that we should really be talking about?
Yes. So, I mean, in our organization, 83% of our workforce are women. And I'm happy to say that this role was created basically for me, to give me a level of an advancement. It's not, we didn't have a COO before I was appointed. We didn't have a woman who was an executive vice president equal to the chief financial officer, who's an executive vice president, who happens to be a man. So, you know, that's exciting. And we have 3 women presidents of our hospitals. And one happens to be a doctorally prepared nurse, and she's worked as a nurse. She's a critical care nurse by background. And then 2 other very talented women as well. So obviously in healthcare, there is opportunity, but the higher you go, even today, there's published studies on how many female CEOs are there, and it's about 10 to 11%. And it's very low. I think it was under 50 positions in the country last year were women CEOs. And women CEOs are more likely to be exited than male CEOs, and they're a very small group. So I think, you know, we have to take the opportunities that are given to us, and also we have to strive to get those opportunities. So it's a lot about our, you know, endurance and our willing to work hard as moms and grandmoms, and, you know, all the things that we have to do in addition to being, you know, leaders. And I think that, you know, we're all leaders. Even if you don't have a leadership position, you're all leaders and you're all educators. And as a lifelong learner, you know, the best thing I can do is to share, you know, what I'm learning. And I really think it has so much to do with how you view not only yourself, but the world. And so I am an eternal optimist, and I I pretty much feel like we can overcome any problem put in front of us. And so all the problems that we're having in healthcare, I'm confident we're going to find our way out, especially with the smart people we have on all of our teams across the health system. It's not easy, but we will get there. And I think the attitude you bring to the job, so I never have a bad day, never have a bad day, never use those words, because what you say to yourself and what you say to others is paramount. It's really important. So some days are more challenging and more character building, but I never have a bad day.
Love it.
Right.
I love that. I cannot wait to
love
wake
it.
up every morning and go, today is not a bad day, because they just don't exist. I think that's really so fantastic. And optimism cannot be
Optimism.
understated, because you're right that everything that we tell ourselves, we always have that inner monologue inside of ourselves, and it is always telling us something. And we need to listen to what it is saying, because it really does drive our mindset and our thoughts and how we respond to all of those things. Kelly, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
I'm dying. I'm dying to jump in. I'm dying.
Like, do it.
Yes, because oh my gosh, you are speaking my language, my love language, and I am on a mission in this world. I know what I'm here for is to shift that negative self-image and help people realize, number one, they empower themselves with choices. We are already fighting against a conditioned and evolutionary, biological brain that filters everything through a negative bias. So lean toward the positive as much as you can. Attitude is really everything. Mindset is everything. Your language is so important. It's paramount.
Important.
What we say to, out loud, or even in our monologue, is how we view ourselves. And that's how people are going to view us, because that's projection, right? And you're training people on some kind of a level, behaviorally, energetically, mentally, emotionally. You're training them on how to treat you. So I'm here to shift that negative dialogue, monologue, negative perception, negative self-image, help people create that freedom. It's freedom of knowing that you're doing your best. Not perfect. No one's ever going to be perfect. That's some of the things that I see manifesting from these, clients I work with who come in and they've got this not good enough story. And out of that, it's behaviors of perfectionism and, hypercriticism. And it just doesn't, no wonder they're highly anxious. No wonder they have depressive symptoms. And instead of attending to and addressing just the symptomology, my job is to go help them identify where that began, where's the origination of that idea, because it's not true. It's not true. It's a story that they developed from, conceptualizing something, and then you got this global perspective. I love that you mentioned that, Barbara, that you're like, it's how you see yourself and how you see the world. So if you think you're going to have a bad day, or you declare you're going to have a bad day, you're going to have a bad day. Because our negative subconscious programming too is a heat-seeking missile to find the evidence of that, right? So what's your day going to look like? It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be free. It's not going to be like serene. So yeah, you got me all lit up now. I'm like, this is my mission.
Yes.
I know, but it's so important to talk about, because as women, it is so easy for us to put ourselves in situations where we are so hyper attentive to the things that we do. How are we coming across? How are we being perceived? Are we competent enough? Are we doing everything the right way that we're supposed to? Are we mitigating the chance that there could be bias that we're not, right? And it's a multi-pronged thing. And just by being able to, I think about mindset from those examples is a really powerful tool that all young women should learn to champion early in their career, because I think at the very least, your peace of mind is so valuable. And it's interesting. And I knew this was going to come up, but Nancy is actually a massive advocate for happiness. And even yesterday when we were talking about this panel discussion, she goes, we'll just have fun. I'm like, well, that's simple. That's really great. That's the right kind of attitude. We are going to we'll just have fun. And so I think that really is such a big motivating factor from things that you guys have shared. Nancy, when you focus on happiness, What are some of those, what is that focus coming from for you?
Well, my husband would say it's coming from La La Land, but because he thinks I approach everything in the world of Nancy. But I'm with you, Kelly. It's all about your mindset, right? So one of the things that I do, and I told this to Rachel yesterday, one of the things I do for my skincare brand is I go on live TV. So I go on HSN, and I'm a regular on Good Day LA here locally. And it's live TV. You have one shot at it, you know, and you usually have like 3 to 6 minutes to do it. And I would get so nervous, so worked up, you know, my stomach would have trouble, and my armpits would have trouble, and my mouth would have trouble. Couldn't speak, you know, dry mouth and sweaty pits and all the whole thing. And one of my patients, as we live through our patients, right, Audrey, we have all the stories from our patients. I say that a million times every week. I have this patient that said this. Anyway, she told me, just that reaction is the same reaction to happiness and to correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, and to excitement. So instead of saying I'm super nervous, I'm nervous about doing this, I'm really excited to do it. So, and it's the same thing, but it's a different mindset. I'm really happy to do it. I'm excited to do it. And then all of a sudden, I still get a dry mouth, but all the other issues have gone away. So happiness, I've infused it into my practice. We want a happy environment. I only have a staff of 8, Barbara. I don't have zillions like you do. So I allow all my employees to, and I don't call them employees, I call them my team members. I allow them to do their schedule, and they just have to cover one another. There has to be someone there, and they can take as many vacations as they want. They can do whatever they want, but giving them that power or control over their lives allows happiness to flourish. And we just have a beautiful, happy family. And then we infused happiness into my skincare line in lots of different ways that you'll have to check out. So happiness, and it all started actually in graduate school. Norman Cousins was lecturing at UCLA, where I went to school, and he talked about how watching funny movies or watching happy things gives the oncology patients a better chance at healing. So that started my interest in happiness way back when, 37 years ago.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's so fantastic. But what I really like about it in a very specific way is how you've actually integrated it into structural processes within your companies. And I think that is something that we're all looking towards, is what are ways that the institutions and the structures that we work for support these things. And I'm sure, Barbara, I'm sure you have so many initiatives because you are such an advocate to so many employees. What are some of the changes that you found the most impactful with your organization that help promote this kind of empowerment?
So we have definitely empowered staff, but we have a culture of caring that we created years ago, and basically it's a group of employees who are focused on healthy work environment, and they make it their job and their responsibility to show up for their peers. And sometimes they show up with a cart and they do aromatherapy and hand massages, and sometimes they'll do Reiki. There's usually chocolate and tea somewhere involved in there, or some sort of a snack. We do cookies and conversation, which, not everybody thought that was a good idea, but I'll tell you, it's a big hit, even with our physicians and the men in general. It's a pretty big thing. And what's interesting is I call them compassionate listeners. So these are mostly integrative therapy nurses. So they practice mindfulness and Reiki and aromatherapy, and they teach it. And so as compassionate listeners, they go out, and now the entire system knows who they are when they show up. When they first started, people are like, who are you and what do you do? Now they're like, oh, we're so glad you're here today. We really need you. And we do it several times a year. And they go even to the non-clinical spaces. But it is incredible to me, the number of people who they literally sit down in a quiet spot of the department, and the person just shares, what's happening outside the organization, and the burdens that they're carrying, and that people cry, and I'm like, wait, you have like people crying like every time you go out, and it's I'll say it's a good cry, because they've had someone who says it's okay to feel the way you feel, and it's okay that you're not okay, but we're here for you. And so I feel like this spreads across the organization, and sometimes a manager will call and say, can I get the caring cart team, because my team really needs a lift. And they go out and they do it. And that's just a couple of examples, but it's this culture that we have to create, and we have to be mindful of, and we have to live it. And so I basically think my job is just to say yes. So if they want to, if they want to do stuff, they want to try stuff, I just say yes. They get the manpower to do it. We pay people, whatever. And even if we're in struggling times, you still have to take care of your number one asset, which is your people. And so I think that we do a lot of things. We had pop-up messages on the computer during COVID. They were quotes, they were uplifting. Some people printed them out and put them all over their offices. But somebody put in the chat, that words matter. And they absolutely do. And we have to say encouraging things to ourselves and to others every day. And you can change someone's life and not even know it just by how you interact with them. And so, and even when someone doesn't interact with me, maybe the way I'd like it on the return, I just recognize that their burdens are bigger than mine. And maybe my word or my smile or what I said to them, maybe they'll think about it later and be like, I don't know why she did it, but that was very nice. And it happened to me. I'll stop in 1 second. I was at the Wawa, which is where you get coffee in the morning. And I always stop and get a cup of tea. And this young man said to me, he was like, did anyone tell you that you look beautiful today? And I was like, no. And he was like, you look beautiful today. And I was like, thank you. Totally random. People don't say that to me like regularly, whatever. But I was just like, thank you. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. And then he said, I hope you have a blessed day. And I was like, I hope you have a blessed day as well. I mean, it was beautiful. And it was just like 2 weeks ago. And, it was just lovely. But I think it is, and I'm still thinking about that young man who saw me at 6 o'clock in the morning and, decided he should talk to me. And, I don't know if he knows how much he perked me up that day, but he, put a pep in my step.
Yeah, and it's such a ripple effect. It really is. It's so hard to have those things not be just a little contagious, right? And I think that you being able to be in the position where you're looking at each person on your teams really holistically, and that's something that we try to do so heavily here, of really looking at our community of the clinicians that we have and going, okay, what is really the best way to approach each person? Because even just from this panel, you guys all have the incredible strength, you all have tenacity, you all have the ability to be flexible when you need to, but really push for your goals. And those are all the common threads. But in reality, you guys all come from different backgrounds. You all have different approaches to work in different ways, and that evolution of your career. So even with so many things in common, so many differences, and so to be able for you, Barbara, to look at all of the different benefits that may really impact the people working for you, I think is so important. And I really appreciate you sharing that. But when it comes, we actually have a question. So I'm curious how the leaders include equity work and how that affects the environment. Audrey, I'm actually quite curious because I actually really want to get your perspective on this. Now, you shared with me that your daughter is also a nurse. I'm curious how you see that equity changing from the time that you were early in your career relative to where she's at now.
I don't see the change. And I promise you, I want to see change. I am hopeful. My daughter is in the same hospital that I started in 38 years ago in critical care. I was the only African-American nurse in 1994. When she's been a nurse three years, going on 4. She was the only African-American nurse in her CCU unit. And I'm like, how can that be? What? I don't understand. But I want to see a difference. I want to see more diversity into the critical care setting. I don't know exactly what it is like on the other floors, but in critical care, there's not been a big change in 30 years, and I just don't get it. And then I do want to say, Barb had mentioned back about leadership being in all of us. And Nancy never thought of herself as a leader. I've never thought of myself as a leader. All I can think of was the caring for my patient, how productive, how much more I could do to deliver the best patient care that I could. So when I think back in leadership and empowering like the community, I belong to the first health initiative where here in Chicago, there were 50 churches where the first ladies, which is the first ladies are the wives of the pastor, got together and said, you know, we've got to attack these diseases. We've got to empower people with information. So we would have health fairs like every 3 months. We would have Walgreens come in and talk to us and give us information on hypertension, diabetes, colon cancer, you know, things that were really, really affecting the African-American community. So things of that sort needs to continue. It needs to continue in all grounds of healthcare. I'm a member of the National Black Nurses Association. There again, we mentor young nursing students. We want to make them the best nurses that they can be. And that's by sharing our stories, taking them to different hospitals, letting them, you know, work side by side with us just to make the difference. But going forward, we just need to do more, and I want to do more, and I just don't know where to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is really tough to, and in this, again, like I kind of called on you a little bit because I had the inside little bits of stories from things that you have shared with me about really what that evolution has been, especially for your daughter. And again, going back to what Barbara said, is trying to create that structure that supports the cultural change is really tough. Barbara, you actually got another question from our chat. I don't know if you've seen it, but it says, I'd love to hear if there are any initiatives that you are bringing that bring equity, given Audrey's answer, as I believe this is not an isolated experience in healthcare on every level.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to work in some very progressive organizations, going back to Abington Memorial Hospital, which is also here in Pennsylvania. In the early 2000s, really got heavily involved in diversity, respect, equity, and inclusion. And we didn't use all those terms back then, but basically all of that worked together. And then when I came to Mainline, it was one of the tenets that was really important, culture of safety, equality, and equity. And we've evolved with our language, but our CEO is a national advocate. He's on the board for the American Hospital Association, and he's facilitated, I'll say, calls to action in the Philadelphia region with other CEOs to say you have to adopt, these tenets around diversity, respect, equity, inclusion. And Audrey's right. He actually just said to me, and his name's Jack Lynch. He's an amazing guy, but he just said to me maybe a couple of months ago, Audrey, he said, so Barbara, we were together, and I forget where we heard it, but we were together, and someone mentioned the lack of diversity in nursing in certain specialties like the emergency department, labor and delivery, and critical care. So I've run these numbers before, but I ran them again. I had HR run all of our percentages of diversity across the health system in every clinical area, including those specialty areas. We have, I want to say, between 10 and 15, maybe 18% diversity in those specialty areas, which is in some of the campuses higher than med-surg diversity. So in our health system, it didn't play out as far as how it's been reported in other health systems. But when you just said that the hospital that you were in Chicago, which,
Yes.
okay, sometimes, you know, where you live, there aren't a lot of people of color, but in Chicago, that's relatively diverse population, same like Philadelphia. And, you know, you have to focus on it, you have to measure it, and you have to create a pipeline. So we have all these high school programs, we have nurse externs that we hire. We partner with primarily universities who have primarily a patient or a student population of Black and Brown people, so that we can bring more people into our organization. But getting them is one thing, but you have to keep them. So you have to create an environment. And I will say we're still working on that, but we talk about it. We don't close a position, a management position, leadership position without having diverse candidates. We look at everything we're doing around diversity, and I could go on. I could do a whole talk on what we've done for diversity, but we have put all of our employees and all of our leaders through a 2-day diversity education experience, and it changes the conversation. And we talk about all the isms. We talk about maternal mortality in African-American women. I just measured that. We don't have an issue of mortality in our 8,000 moms that are delivering. We do have, I'll say, an opportunity for improvement around C-section complications. And so we're in the detail, and I have an entire set of metrics around clinical care, but also age, race, really trying to dig into the details. But the leaders of healthcare have to have this as one of the things that they're paying attention to and measuring. That's the only way to change it.
Yeah, thank you so much to both of you for having something that is a really sensitive topic for everyone. And it is true. I think we all need to make the active choice to be leaders, right? Whether we're called into that in a formal way or not, and really doing what we can to build in processes that create that cultural change for inclusiveness. And coming from just, we're such a diverse group of women here, we all are responsible for being able to take those next steps and moving it forward. I know we're going to end here in a minute, so I just want to take a sec and say thank you all so much for participating. And Nancy, I think you actually have a small little announcement about your skincare line, so I want to give you a chance to share a little bit of that with us before we end.
You're so sweet. So we are the first nurse-founded medical grade luxury skincare line, and founded by myself, a nurse for all those years I told you about. It's called The Route, R-O-U-T-E, or The Route if you're back east. And I had a panel of nurses help me. I went through the development process from start to finish, and we have what's called a nurse-powered network. So if you go onto theroutebeauty.com, you can sign up as an RN, an LVN, an NP, a PA. I'm going to get licensed clinical social workers in there.
Thank you. Mental health practitioners need it too.
That's right. That's right. But I have another code for you today. But if you sign up for the Nurse Powered Network, as a nurse, forever and a day, you will get a substantial discount off of our skincare line for every clinician out there forever. So it's a standing discount, much like the makeup artists get makeup discounts. This is for nurses and the healthcare field. And today I have an additional code of women 25. If you're not an RN, I will fix that. But women 25, and you can go onto our website and get a discount. And it's just my way to give back to the nurses and in general. And Audrey, I should talk to you because I have an idea for your your nurses association. Maybe we can figure out a way to help. So yeah, so thank you very much. It's called the Route Beauty and Nurse Powered Network. Thank you so much. I would love for you. And even if you don't purchase anything, it would be nice to show your support in the Nurse Powered Network, because we would love to have a community of nurses.
Yes, of course. That sounds so great. And I really appreciate all of that. So I do have one quick question before we go. Somebody did ask if we're going to be able to connect with all of the panelists on LinkedIn. So any contact or anything at all I'll gather from the panelists, and then I'll make sure I send that out to all of our participants and make sure that everybody has access to all of it. But thank you so much for such an incredible conversation. I know Nancy said we were going to have fun. We had so much more fun than I even thought. You guys should have seen the nerves that I had going into it. And so it's the mindset, and I appreciate every single one of you guys so much, and I can't wait to continue to talk further.